Oh my god, this is so awkward. So basically my window looks to my neighbor's window, like directly. And obviously I've never caught anyone like looking in, but when I'm recording, I always have this fear that people are watching me and I look silly, but nonetheless, we will power through. So I'm here to talk to you about the books that I read in September. We're talking about 6 books that I read, and 5 of those books I actually like read on my Kindle. One of them was an audiobook, which I'm really proud of because I think like for it to work out that way, I have to make more time to sit and read versus be on my phone or on YouTube or whatever. Although I don't mind doing all of that, I think it's a good sign that I'm going towards like actually reading books because I think it helps with my focus better. Anyways, yeah, let's get into the books I read this month. I think I had a really good reading month for September, even though it wasn't that many books. I think 6 is a pretty good goal. Let's go through the books that I read. So I think I'm gonna kind of break it down in this way just so that it makes sense. I'm going to give you a summary as far as I can remember. And then I don't want to give ratings because I just don't think that's useful for me. I put ratings when it's on Goodreads, but it's like my immediate visceral reaction to finishing the book, and I don't think that's an actual reflection of how good the book is. It's just a reflection of like how I'm feeling. I think it's better to talk about what I liked or disliked about the book and just leave it at that versus try to give it like a actual rating, because at the end of the day that's like going to be super subjective. So the first book that I finished in September was A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber, and this is the 3rd in the series. I read the series over I think like 2 years because the books had already come out by the time I started reading them. I look like Little Red Riding Hood when my scarf is like doing that. I think this was my favorite book of the 3, just to start out. Since this is the 3rd in the series, there will be kind of spoilers, so if you don't want to hear them, jump ahead or just don't watch. So basically, Evangeline, our main character, loses her memories after unlocking this like vault, and when she loses her memories, she's kind of like taken over or like controlled by Apollo, and he keeps trying to tell her like not to worry about her memories, to kind of move on because he just wants to be with her and he doesn't really want her to remember what happened, because I think he's worried that if she remembers, she's not gonna like him anymore. And also like he's aware that there's some sort of relationship between her and Jax, or like some sort of attraction between her and Jax, and he just wants Jax out of the picture so that he can keep Evangeline to himself. That's like the basic summary of the story. I really liked this book. I liked it, like I said, I liked this more than the other 2 books. I ate it up. I think that you could read this book, and I've said this before in some of my vlogs, but I definitely think that that's a book you can read on its own almost, which isn't to say that the first 2 books are like not necessary or like superfluous or whatever. I think it just means that it was well written enough that like I could have read that, and I did. I read it like completely having forgotten 90% of what happened in the previous 2 books, and I still enjoyed it a lot. Let's just put it that way. I really recommend this. Obviously if you liked Caraval by the same author, because the worlds are kind of similar. If they're not the same, they might even be the same. I really liked Caraval. I can't really remember actually what happened in that series, but I remember really liking it. Possibly liking it even more than I like this one, but I can't compare because okay, I can't really compare the 2 because I don't remember Caraval. I think I need to reread that series. But based off of what I remember feeling after that series, I think I like that one more. But it might also just be different circumstances. Anyways, so that was A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. So the next book that I read and I finished, I had actually read this or started reading this a lot earlier in the year, and then the book got taken away from me on Libby, and then I had to wait for it to come in, and then I got really busy. I had my like summer slump, and then when it came back again the last time, I was like, okay, I really want to finish this, because again, like a lot of the other books that I read this summer, I knew I was going to enjoy it if I was, if I was in the mood to read them, and if I was in the mood to read at all. And the only reason I was trudging through a lot of these books was because I was just not in the mood to read, unfortunately. So Crescent follows our main character, Serene, as she is she's a cook. So basically, let's put it this way. Serene is a cook in a cafe in a university. A new professor, Hanif, comes to the university and starts teaching, and a lot of the students like him, and Hanif ends up meeting him, having a relationship with him, and talking to him. She's half Iraqi, half white, and he's completely Iraqi. And as they start to have a relationship, she starts learning about him and his past and his family, and in some way starts thinking about her identity more. Alongside that relationship and the story of them meeting and like falling in love, there is also this fairy tale-esque story that her uncle is telling her, which has nothing to do but everything to do with what's going on in their actual lives. There's a few like twists and turns. The ending, honestly, like well, first of all, I cried a few times. I was literally on the treadmill reading this because I wanted to read it so bad. And I was like, I am going to cry in the middle of the gym, and not for the same reason as Taylor Swift. And I was like, okay, no. It was really emotional. I think there's a lot about like, obviously immigration, but there's a lot about like home and identity going on here. A lot of this struggle that I think a lot of immigrants, and even to a certain extent the children of immigrants, have, which is this idea of like leaving your homeland or leaving your ancestral land and making a new home outside of there, but also losing that identity because you've left. And then also the fact that like once you leave a place, especially a place as important as your homeland or as your home, or you could even say like as your hometown, things will change over there inevitably. And when you return to it, it's not the same place that it was when you left. And that was one of the big themes of the story. And I think this was one of the like more emotional parts of the story, why it like hit so hard. Because it made me think a lot about the fact like when I was living in Iran, how it was there, and how like now when I go back there, it feels different. And I wasn't even like born in Iran. I just like lived there for 2.5 years. Point is, the story was really hard hitting, and it was just so beautiful. I loved the romance and I loved the themes, and I think it was just so beautifully written. There is so much, I think the richest sense in this book was also smell. And because Serene is a cook, so she's like describing the foods that she's cooking, she's describing what it smells like, she's describing what she's doing, the chopping and whatever. The senses were just so rich in this book as well. I love this, highly recommend. Crescent by Diana Abu Jaber. I don't know if I said the author's name, but I really love this book. Okay, so then the next book that I read, which is part of the series, so I'll talk about the two books together. The next two books I want to talk about that I read in September is The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King. So I read these books back in like 2018 when they were coming out. I had just finished reading Akatar, and I was just like, I need something just like this. And then I found out about the Cruel Prince series, and I was like, okay, let's eat this. I remember even then loving this series like more than Akatar, and now that I'm rereading it, I'm like, first of all, I'd forgotten so much of it, and I think that was part of what I was waiting for when I wanted to reread the book, because I always knew I wanted to reread them. I was just like waiting until enough time would pass that I'd forget what happened, and I forgot like a good amount, like maybe 90% of it. Which is why like as I was reading, I like guessed some of the things, but then also I was like kind of wrong. It was beautiful. I love this book series. So in The Cruel Prince, it's about Jude and Taryn and Vivi to a certain extent, but mostly Jude is our main character, who when they were really young, and this isn't necessarily spoilers because it's in the prologue, but when they're really young, Maddock, who is a fairy from fairyland, shows up at their door, murders their parents, adopts the 3 kids. Vivi is his daughter, like biologically, and then Jude and Taryn are his wife's children. They have a different father, so they're not actually related by blood. But Jude, Taryn, and Vivi grow up in Maddock's household. Jude is now like 17, 18 years old, and she really wants to have like power and like position within fairyland, because as a mortal, she has less power and less... Well, my phone died. I don't remember what I was talking about. I know I was talking about Cruel Prince. Jude is trying to find any way to gain power. Initially, she wants to get a knighthood so that she can like be a defender of the king, and then things spiral out from there and blah blah blah. I don't want to spoil the series. I don't want to tell you what happens, even though it's very fresh in my mind. I'm waiting for my hold for the Queen of Nothing to come in. Right now, Libby says it's going to take 11 weeks, which is torture, but I started a different book, so it's fine. This book series is honestly like everything that I want from a book. I flew through both books and I enjoyed every single moment. The writing is so rich. I can really imagine, like, it just feels so real. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, well, I know kind of how to explain it. It's just the writing is really rich. The way that the fairies are portrayed is just so lovely. Like, it's not the way like ACOTAR is, where like they're all these like, ooh, sexy buff like fairies. Well, they're literally just like bullies and constantly trying to manipulate and trick you. And the way that Jude is written, like so paranoid and so like always thinking everyone's out to get her, chef's kiss. And shout out to my bestie Isra for insisting that I reread the books, because I've been meaning to, but the only reason I actually picked it up recently is because of Isra. So I love you. So then the next book that I finished, which I did also talk about in my vlogs, is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. So I had a lot of mixed feelings about this. I listened to it on Spotify. I also listened to Just for the Summer before, I think it was in August. And I think between the two, I like the other one more, only because this one, again, I had complicated feelings about it. So basically this is about two doctors. They work in the same hospital. They meet, and essentially what happens is that there's a sort of like exchange between the two of them. So Brianna, our female love interest, the girl, and Justin, is it just, am I forgetting the name? Hold on, let me double check. Jacob, they all have J names. I think Abby Jimenez is trying to save the J name reputation. Anyways, so Jacob and Brianna, right? They're both doctors. Brianna's brother has kidney issues, like severe kidney issues. He's on dialysis and he needs a kidney. Jacob is just reeling from a breakup. His ex-girlfriend is with his brother and they are actually getting married. So that's kind of the setup. What ends up happening is that Jacob, behind Brianna's back, just casually goes and tests to see if he's a match for her brother. He doesn't tell her, which, okay, that's a good thing. But she ends up finding out, and then right after she ends up finding out, he asks her, like, indirectly, like, hey, can you pretend to be my girlfriend for the duration of, like, the weeks leading up to my brother and my ex-girlfriend's marriage, and then like, see you later. We all know where this is going. I will say, again, because of that exchange, I felt uncomfortable, because I was just like, you know, like at the end of the day, even if they both like want to do these things or like have their reasons for it, still feels like there's that little voice in the back of their heads of like, or especially Brianna, where it's like, oh, I have to do this because he's donating an organ to my brother, like literally saving my brother's life. I don't know, but I feel like it saved itself at the end, because I don't know. I think the way that it played out in a way that made it very clear that she wasn't doing this, or she wasn't in the relationship with him because of the organ donation situation. I just think that because of that, I had more complex feelings about this book than like when compared to Just for the Summer. That's not to say it was bad or anything. I did end up really enjoying it. The last 20% especially, really liked that, enjoyed it. It was a fun time. And then finally, the last book that I'm going to talk to you guys about is Wayward by Emilia Hart. So this book, in summary, is about 3 different women in 3 different time zones. They're all related to each other. So there is Altha, who is from 1619. I'm actually really surprised that I can remember the dates. And then there is Kate, who is the most recent like woman in that line, and then there's Violet, who is I think like closest to Kate in terms of like, so Kate is modern day, Altha is like 1619, and then Violet's like closer to Kate's time, great aunt basically. Okay, and throughout the story you're basically following throughout the book you're following each of their narratives and each of their stories. Altha is accused of witchcraft. Violet is escaping a very like abusive household, and there is SA in this, which I like. This book needed trigger warnings, just side note, but Violet escapes an abusive household and barely escapes having to marry like a horrible man. And then Kate also escapes like abusive relationship, and she, yeah, I don't want to spoil it. Based off of the cover, I don't know why, and this was one of those books where without knowing anything about it, I just read it. I didn't know anything about it, didn't have a summary, nothing. I expected it to be like something else completely. So it was a disappointment in that I didn't know what to expect, but I made a bunch of assumptions and those assumptions were all wrong. But as a book itself, as what it wasn't bad. It was pretty good. Like, it was a decent novel. There were points at which I was kind of like bored because I felt like it was moving really slowly. But I didn't think that was necessarily I didn't DNF it, and I was actually like reading it. So DNFing like a book that I'm listening to is a lot harder than like DNFing a book that I'm actually like spending my physical time, you know, because like with reading you can't, like with physical books and like your Kindle, you can't like do other stuff, right? So I'm much more inclined to DNF books that I'm actually reading. It was good. I wouldn't necessarily, like, it's not a book that I would off the top of my head recommend, but if someone was looking for something like this, I would recommend it. It's not a bad book at all, by no means. It was really stressful at some points because again, there's a lot of like abuse, there's a lot of SA, there's a lot of tension, especially towards the end of the book, but I thought it was good. That's it. That's all I can say. Those are the books that I read in September. I genuinely think I had a good reading month with that. There were a couple books in there that I was kind of like, pushing through a little bit, but generally speaking, I read books that I really, really enjoyed and books that like either I knew for a fact I was gonna enjoy or that I was pleasantly surprised by. Anyways, thank you for watching. Let me know if you read any of these books that I'm talking about or like had them on your list. I hope you do give them a chance. I genuinely think that unless like a book is super, super bad, it's worth reading just for the experience and to like kind of have it yourself. But yeah, I'm really excited for October. I'm excited for the little vlogs I'm hoping to make in that month, and I'm so excited for fall. It's already, the trees are turning colors and the weather's changing. I just haven't been loving the gloominess. I feel like it shouldn't be this gloomy. It feels like winter. I'm kind of worried we're skipping over fall, but hopefully we'll have more fall days before it gets really, really cold here. So I don't know. Anyways, thank you for watching. Bye.